Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Understanding Clinical Trials. I know there's so much going on in the world right now, and I hope that today's webinar can serve as a helpful distraction for the next hour. My name is Catherine Freeland, and I'm the Public Health Program Director at the Hepatitis B Foundation. Before we get started with today's webinar, I'd like to go over some logistics for today's session. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording and slides will be available following the webinar, and we'll be sure to send those out to each of you if you're attending live or if you registered. And we'd like to note that this webinar is being supported by the National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health under a cooperative agreement with the University of Pittsburgh Health Science Library System. To participate actively in today's webinar, you can join in using your phone or your laptop. All attendees are going to be in listen-only mode, so you will be muted. At any point during the webinar, you can type questions or comments in the chat box or using the question feature. We're looking forward to hearing from you throughout today's webinar. I'd also like to point out that we have closed captions being offered today. The link is in the chat box, and it's also listed here on the slide. I'd like to just point out a little bit about Hep B United, which is a national coalition within the United States that's made up of community-based organizations and national leaders across the country working on addressing hepatitis B within underserved communities through direct outreach and education. The Hep B United is led and was established by the Hepatitis B Foundation and the Association of Asian Pacific Community Health Organizations to address hepatitis B. The coalition works to raise the profile of hepatitis B and liver cancer as an urgent public health priority, improve hepatitis B testing, vaccination, and access to care to ultimately prevent liver disease and liver cancer associated with hepatitis B. I'd like to point out before we get started a few helpful resources, particularly since this is a webinar focused on clinical trials and specific for hepatitis B. We have some resources on the Hepatitis B Foundation's website, and we'll also be talking about some additional resources from the National Library of Medicine and clinicaltrials.gov later in the presentation. But just to get us started, the Hepatitis B Foundation does have a helpful drug watch page, which highlights specific drugs under development for hepatitis B. You can check out the page at www.hepb.org. We also have a clinical trial finder for hepatitis B patients. Specifically, you can fill out some information and be directed towards clinical trials that you might be eligible for in your area. And we also have a physician directory on our website, all under the treatment and management page, which can help you find a physician or a specialist that might be running clinical trials near you as well. As many of you know, the process for approving new medications in the United States involves clinical trials, and clinical trials, or also clinical research, are studies in human volunteers to answer specific health questions. These trials are carefully conducted and are the fastest and safest way to find treatments that work in people and ways to improve health. They're conducted in a series of steps, in which we'll talk a little bit about later, and volunteering for clinical trials can be very valuable. And can help advance medical research and therapeutics in novel medications. At this time, I'd now like to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers today. We're very lucky to have a great set of speakers. I'd like to introduce first Joe Ballesteri. He's a patient advocate and citizen scientist. For over 20 years, he's shared his experiences with hepatitis B and hepatitis D, or hepatitis delta, in order to educate his family and communities. In 2019, he had the great fortune to join the Hepatitis B Foundation's Just Be Video Storytelling Workshop. And with this video, he's reached beyond his community in talking about prevention and advocacy. Since January, he shared his experiences and observations either as a paid consultant or as an unpaid volunteer with several biomedical research organizations, as well as the HBV Forum and the Patient-Focused Drug Development Meeting with the FDA on chronic hepatitis B last June. Our second speaker today is the esteemed Dr. Hyewon Han, who's the Director of Liver Disease Prevention at the Center for Liver Disease Prevention Center at Jefferson, and is a world health leader expert on hepatitis B. She's received many awards, including the Distinguished Leadership Award from the Hepatitis B Foundation, the Women in Leadership Award from Women's Way, the Korean American Pioneer Award, and the 2003 Distinguished Daughter of Pennsylvania Award. Her impact on controlling the global spread of hepatitis B is undeniable. She's a key opinion leader and has spoken across the United States, Korea, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Australia, Panama, and so many other places. She is a true expert on clinical trials and specific for hepatitis B, the first antiviral drug, lamivudine, was launched in 1998. Which started really a new era for hepatitis B therapies. And she worked on the initial lamivudine trial, the results of which were published in a landmark study in the New England Journal of Medicine. And since then, she's conducted more than 24 clinical trials evaluating all 5 currently available antiviral agents. She's also on the medical advisory board at the Hepatitis B Foundation, and we are so lucky and honored to have her in Philadelphia and with us here today to share her expertise. And our final speaker today is Erin Seeger. She is a public health professional who lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She has 10 years of experience as a health educator and public health professional. As health professions coordinator at the National Network of Library of Medicine Middle Atlantic region, she supports clinicians, health educators, and public health workers throughout Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware by ensuring they have access to quality health information. So thanks all to our speakers. And now I'd like to turn it over to Joe to share his experience specific to clinical trials. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be a part of this and to be in such esteemed company. I was starting in 2013, after my hepatitis D diagnosis was confirmed at UC San Francisco, I was told there was really nothing that could be done, that there were no really good treatments for hepatitis D, and that it was very serious. And I did some research and found the hepatitis D lonafarnib study at NIH, and I wrote Dr. Christopher Coe, and he responded in an email right away. And within a month or so, I was in DC and being tested, and I was accepted into the study. There were 3 parts to the study. The first part was treating hepatitis D with lonafarnib. The second part included ritonavir, and the third part included lambda interferon along with the first 2 drugs. It was quite an experience it would be for anyone, but coming from the opposite coast kind of added to the challenges of being in 6 years worth of clinical trials. I flew to DC probably something like, well, over 70 times in 6 years. Let's see, and each time I had challenges with the treatments. The first 2 parts of the study, we addressed my symptoms, nausea, diarrhea, whatever, with additional drugs, and I got through the first 2 phases okay. And the third part of the study that included interferon, I had my challenges. I got the drugs to help me with side effects like diarrhea and nausea. And after about 2 months into that study, I supposedly became the first patient to ever have the Delta virus go undetectable through medical treatment. And that was right around Christmas, which is my birthday, and I celebrated that. The picture at the top of the page of me and my husband was that Christmas, and well, I was very happy. You know, I was thrilled because I so wanted to get rid of the virus. But then within a couple of weeks, my body was reacting very badly, apparently to the lambda interferon. And lambda is supposed to be a milder version of interferon, but in the end, my body could not tolerate it. And we tried different things. We tried taking a break from the interferon. We tried taking a break from all the drugs, but it became apparent that I had to stop the study drugs altogether. My liver reacted very badly, and I had all kinds of problems that took me many months to recover from. It was a very scary time and very disappointing because I thought for sure I was going to get through the full course of the drug trial. I did continue going to DC to be monitored because, well, as bad as I felt that information was vital to the whole study, and I didn't want to interrupt that. But there were times where I really didn't want to get on that plane and fly across the country. And most of my trips would be overnight, and that was kind of grueling, especially at the end when I felt so sick. I probably had 4 or 5 needle biopsies, and then in the last phase I had the biopsy, I forget the technical name, where the scope goes in through a vein in your neck, through your heart to your liver. I was told that was much safer, but it didn't appeal to me. Anyway, I got through those biopsies okay. What else? Now, patients are not supposed to interact with fellow patients in a trial, but over the course of 6 years, you know, you run in. One time I ran into a patient on the plane going to DC. Another time a patient at the family lodge where I would stay if I wasn't actually admitted to the hospital, the lodge across from the NIH hospital. So I would meet people, and we always said we would not talk about our symptoms, but it was a great help to, you know, especially for a relatively rare illness, to connect with people. And of course, then once as the trial was over, because of research I was doing about my challenges, I found the Hepatitis B Foundation, and connecting with the staff and with other patients really was a huge help on a emotional and mental health level, and also in terms of being educated. I could probably go on, but I think I'll just wait for your questions. So thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Joe. I thank you for being here and for sharing your experience with clinical trials. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Han to share a little bit about the clinical side of clinical trials and give us a bit of an overview about hepatitis B as well. Dr. Han?
Yes. As we might know, Dr. Blumberg at Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia discovered the hepatitis B virus in 1965. In 1982, he also made hepatitis B vaccine, the first one made from human plasma. So when he had this vaccine, while we didn't have any medicine for hepatitis B, in order to vaccinate uninfected individuals in Asian American community, which we knew they have very high incidence of liver disease, we began to screen from Park Chase and through also Jefferson when I moved to Jefferson, and we identified a large number of hepatitis B patients. Until 1996, we didn't have any medicine except interferon, which Mr. Joe just described, which is pretty toxic and it has to be injected, and it was not highly effective for Asian American hepatitis B patients who were mostly infected at birth. So we were quite frustrated until 1996 when first clinical trial with lamivudine appeared. So happily, I presented this to patients who were struggling with the hepatitis B and no treatment, and yet the trial made them kind of shrink back, saying maybe they are used as a human experiment. So it needed for us to explain what clinical trials have to be. So this is what I began to explore. To make one drug to be tried for human being, it takes at least several years after identifying the drug, the agent, and then tissue trials, in vitro tests, and then going through small animals like mice, rat, and then sometimes guinea pig, rabbit, and monkey, and finally chimpanzee, which also had similar hepatitis virus. So after you try with a human chimpanzee, then the drug will be first time presented to human. So the first, next slide, please. The first trial for human being will be phase 1, which is only for normal individuals, mostly male, 18 to 25, healthy, and who are able to volunteer to be tried. And during the trials, they will be usually admitted in the hospital and clinical research unit to make sure they are safe. And we have to find the safety dosage and any side effects. During the trial with these healthier subjects who are volunteering, and maybe sometimes they get paid, but we measure blood chemistry, urine, heart rate, even sometimes brain waves to be sure it's safe to trial. And finally, we find the maximum dose that can be tried to human beings. Then the second phase is what we call phase 2, which will again measure effectiveness for hepatitis B virus control and the dosage we have to try. This time, for the first time, we'll try on patients with hepatitis B, chronic hepatitis B. And it will number maybe 100 to 200, depending on the trial. And during that time, we will be trying different dosage, because in phase 1, we knew the maximum dose that human subject can tolerate is decided. Then we'll go smaller dosage. For example, if in phase 1, normal subject could tolerate maximum 100 milligram, then we'll try 100 milligram, 50 milligram, 25, even lower. So during this 3-4 different dosage trials, we finally find what is the most effective one and most safest one. When you find same efficacy between 100 and 50, and they are all safe and the efficacy is same, then we choose lower dose, 50 milligram. So with this decided dose of 50 milligram, which is effective and safe, then we start phase 3 trials. This will include a large number of patients, multi-center trial, it could be international, and again, we check effectiveness and side effects. And then sometimes if there is other drug, then you can compare with other products. But for lamivudine, which came into 1996, we didn't have any. So this is what we tried with lamivudine versus placebo, which is sugar pill we call, and they will be randomized blindly. Nobody knows, the patient does not know, the investigator does not know, and the other people do not know who is taking the real medicine and the other one who is taking the fake medicine. At the end of these large trials, they will be monitored very carefully for the side effects and effectiveness. And at the end of these phase 3 trials, finally we'll have the definite answer. Those who took that medicine had high risk effect controlling the virus replication, whereas those on placebo, there was no effect in the virus replication. So this will be summarized, published in journals, and will be presented to FDA for examination and approval. FDA will review very carefully over a year sometimes, and then finally stamp. You can treat this patient and they get approval for selling. So this is what takes a long time. So for the patients who are kind of reluctant, what are these? Am I going to be guinea pig or something? This is the question they usually raised, explaining the whole course of clinical trials and how in the end, carefully the drug will be tried for those patients. Then I have not seen any resistance in the patients. They were all understanding, they were grateful, and they participated. Next slide. So we have done quite a large number of clinical trials, including the first one in 1996, which Jefferson participated in New England Journal of Medicine as the first drug for hepatitis B. And I was very happy to be part of that one. So during this long time, since 1996, for lamivudine, which is approved FDA in 1998 with the name of Epivir HBV, and the next one, adefovir, which was approved in 2002 with the name of Hepcera, and so on. But for each medicine that you can see, there were quite a few numbers of trials because we are not just doing one kind. You do variation and also different group of patients who are very sick, and there are those who have cancer, those who has a very light course, early stage of hepatitis B, and so on. When the new drug comes, then you can compare with this first drug and second drug. So that's why there are several trials for each medicine. Now, at this point, we have luxury of having highly effective 6 hepatitis B treatment drug, although currently the third one, entecavir, and the fifth one, Viriad or tenofovir disoproxil fumarate, and the late arrival tenofovir alafenamide called Vemlidy are mostly used for chronic hepatitis B in the world. Next slide. We'll show you how you decided. This was the first trial with lamivudine in Asia, where the red one is placebo 215, and the green one is lamivudine treated patient 436. They were tried blindly, and over the 33 years, you could see the incidence of liver cancer dropped to 3.9% compared to 7.4%, which was statistically significant. As you know, hepatitis B causes liver cancer. They are the worst. It is the worst hepatocarcinogen in the whole world. So it was quite clear that with lamivudine, you could not only treat chronic inflammation of the liver, but also you could reduce the incidence of liver cancer. Next slide will show you another clinical trial with the entecavir, which was the Veracruz we called, again showing the number of patients are equal in 316 each. Again, those treated with entecavir had lower incidence of hepatocellular carcinoma. Next slide will show you, this time it's a TDF in highlight. It is tenofovir disoproxil fumarate, which used to be called the Viriad, showing on the left side those who did not have liver cirrhosis. And the other one, right side, is all together with liver cirrhosis. Those who have liver cirrhosis higher risk for developing liver cancer. That's why they made the two separate slides. However, compared to the expected instance, which is the dotted line, those who are treated with the tenofovir showed a definite significant decrease of instance for hepatocellular carcinoma, liver cancer. The next slide will show you from 1985, when you look at the world liver cancer, up to 85%, majority of liver cancer seen in the world was due to chronic hepatitis B virus infection. In year 2000, 2 years after the first antiviral drug, lamivudine, already showed decrease of HBV, hepatitis B related liver cancer to 60%. Now in 2016, only 50% of worldwide liver cancer is caused by hepatitis B virus. This means based on the clinical trial and also with the participated by all the patients, and then approval of the drug, and then good usage of this highly effective anti-HBV drug, we could certainly reduce the incidence of HCC. And I think in the future, at the moment, there is a movement for HBV cure drug, which I already am in clinical trial. Two of the medicine, which is called HBV cure drugs, are in clinical trial. We are participating at Jefferson. So with that one, finally, we'll be able to maybe get rid of HCC due to hepatitis B virus. And with the cure drug available for hepatitis C virus, maybe hepatitis C virus related liver cancer will also disappear from the world, hopefully. So this is the way I just want to conclude that clinical trial is essential for getting the highly effective drug. And the most important thing is the investigators, those who are doing clinical trials, and the people who are involved are very carefully monitoring the safety of the patients. And this, not only the people who are involved in care, but also those people who made the drug are very carefully watching this. So the clinical trial is essential for us to get the highly effective drug in the future, not only in the past, but in the present time and also in the future. Now, how do we do that? The clinical investigators have to have a sound knowledge and make sure thorough explanation how the drug was developed and how safe, how effective, and how carefully we are monitoring the safety of the patients. Thank you so much. I will take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Han. I do see we have some questions coming in, but I want to first pass it over to our final presenter, Erin from the National Network of Library Medicine, who will be presenting and walking you through some resources that they have. So Erin, I will turn it right over to you.
Great, thank you. So as mentioned, I work for the network of the National Library of Medicine, and I'm mostly going to be talking about a resource from the National Library of Medicine called clinicaltrials.gov, but I put together just a few slides so that you have a general idea of where this resource is produced and what else you can access from the National Library of Medicine and the network of the National Library of Medicine. So I work for the network of the National Library of Medicine, or NNLM for short, and I work in the Middle Atlantic region, which serves New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And we're located at the University of Pittsburgh Health Sciences Library in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're part of 8 regional medical libraries that are funded across the country as part of the NNLM program. And the focus of NNLM is to provide equal access to health information to health professionals and to improve the public's ability to use health information to make informed decisions. And this whole program is funded by the National Library of Medicine, which is the world's largest biomedical library. And they are part of the National Institutes of Health, which is the national research agency made up of 27 institutes and centers. So you can kind of see how we're all nested together there and where I am situated. And so NNLM, where I work, we work toward our mission of equal access to health information by providing training. We have a year-round online training program and webinar series available to anyone that wants to attend. This is free of cost. And we also often present at different staff meetings or trainings in partnership with our member organizations, sort of like I am here today. We also regularly present at different conferences around our region. Of course, these are all virtual these days, but maybe someday we'll be out and about in person again. And we also have funding opportunities available for member organizations to complete projects related to sharing high quality health information. So if you work for an organization that wants to be a member of NNLM, you're welcome to sign up to be a member organization, and you can do that at nnlm.gov/MAR, M-A-R. And then one last slide before I show you the resource. The resource I'll be showing you today is called clinicaltrials.gov. And this is a repository of past and current clinical trials around the world. There's over 316,000 trials that are registered in clinicaltrials.gov, including most trials in the United States. The site is relatively easy to search for trials and different submissions that are there. And these submissions are actually reviewed for clarity when they're sent in to clinicaltrials.gov. And some trials that are now completed also contain results summaries and links to published literature from that particular trial. And anyone can use this site, including researchers, healthcare providers, and patients. And I don't have my webcam on today, but that's me. And any of you are welcome to contact me if you have any questions or anything that I can answer. I know we're going to take questions at the end, but there's my contact information. And I'm going to go ahead and close out the presentation. And I want to open up just a live view of clinicaltrials.gov so you can get an idea of how you would search on here. So this is the clinicaltrials.gov homepage. You can see that there's a lot of different search boxes and things available here. And I went ahead and typed in hepatitis B into the box that says condition or disease. There's some other things like other terms they say here, like an investigator name or drug name, as well as a country. For now, for our demo, I'll just leave that blank and I'll hit search. And now you can see that there's a list of available clinical trials that contain what I typed in, or that keyword hepatitis B, and it's highlighted here so you can see where it is in the title. So this list is sort of not organized in any specific, well, it's organized in a specific way, but not by year or alphabetically. It's organized kind of by an algorithm that's in here in the back end, the part you can't see, on just how relevant that they think this search might be to you. So that's the order that's showing, like the 1, 2, 3, 4. And anything that you were specifically interested in, maybe I wanted this one that's called Hepatitis B Booster Study in Adolescents. When I select that, I'm given a lot of details about that particular trial. So you can see here what type of study design it is, the arms and interventions, the outcomes that will or were measured, depending on if it's still going on. And you can see eligibility criteria and then information from NLM about talk with your doctor about deciding to join a study. And then you can see the contact and location. And then something that I think is really helpful about clinicaltrials.gov is I particularly selected this one to demonstrate because I saw that it had results. So I would be able to show you the publication. So if something's ongoing, of course, there might not be anything published in literature yet about that trial, but this one does have one because it's finished or complete. And so this link down at the bottom under more information will open up a new window that will take you to that actual kind of study publication. And this goes to another resource from the National Library of Medicine called PubMed. So that's really helpful information about the trial. And I'll show you a few other search things that would help you to narrow down what you get here, because you see that we actually got 1,703 different studies that contained our keyword hepatitis B. So one thing that I always find that people are interested in is being able to know what is recruiting, because if somebody wants to know what they might potentially participate in, they might not really care about getting the ones that are completed. So over on the left side, you can select recruiting and then hit apply. And now I've filtered it down to 181 studies that are recruiting. And so that would be a little bit of an easier list to go through. Something else you can do is look at these studies by location. So I think the map feature is helpful. You can see I'm at this tab that says list. If I select on map, now I'm taken to where those studies are located, and I'll select the United States. And then I live in Pennsylvania, and so if I select Pennsylvania, now I have 4 studies that are recruiting and they're located in Pennsylvania. So that would be one way to narrow it down. And sometimes, you might need to look at other features. If there's nothing that shows up, it'll tell you if, oh, there's nothing that's recruiting in your state. So then you might not be able to use that, but if that geography is important to you, I think it's really helpful. I'm also going to show you, some people are actually interested in finding out about the trials that are, I'm going to go redo my search because that'll be the easiest, that do have results. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my hepatitis B search again. And now I'm back to my initial 1,703. Perhaps I don't necessarily want to filter by recruiting, but I want to filter by those that have results. So I can go down to study results, which is this little another drop-down tab. I can select with results and then apply. And now I have 342 that have results. And you can see there's a little link under completed that says has results. And when I click that, I'm given more detail about, I guess in a quick and easy way to say what happened in the trial or what were the outcomes of, and so it's telling us kind of some basic information about who participated and things like that. Some of the data, and then again would link you to any publications that are available about that specific trial. So those are just a few ways to use the filters. You can see there's more things you could narrow it down, such as eligibility criteria or the study type or the study phase, which was mentioned by the presenter before me. So if you only wanted things that were phase, whatever you were interested in. And you can also select this little I for the info button, and it's going to describe to you what that means, what phase 4 is. And it does that with most of these. So if you weren't sure if what an observational study type was, it'll tell you that there just by selecting that little I button. And you can also see who funded the clinical trials. So there's a lot of great information in here. And I encourage you to check it out. Like I said, this is a free website that anyone's welcome to use. It's called clinicaltrials.gov. So you're welcome to go there and look anything up that you're interested in. We also, at NNLM, we teach a full 1-hour class all about using clinicaltrials.gov. So that'll go a lot more in depth if that's something you're really interested in. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because that was my whole presentation. And like I said, I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. That was really helpful. At this time, I again would like to thank our speakers and open it up for questions. I do know we have a few that came in, so let me just get to that. I'd like to hear Dr. Hahn and Joe's perspective. I think you both touched on this a little bit, but for people who have hesitation about joining a clinical trial, do you have thoughts or what ways of reassuring people on joining to kind of give them that information they might need about the safety and efficacy of the trial itself? So I guess, Dr. Hahn, I'll turn it to you first, and then we'll go to Joe.
Yes, I think we have information that we give to patients, like consent form. And of course, I think the most important thing is the communication between the investigator or the clinical trial, the doctor and the patient. If the patient has been under the doctor's care for a long time, they built up trust. So the compliance joining the clinical trial has much less resistance. If you don't know the patient came for the first time and not familiar with the investigator, maybe it might take a while. But again, explanation and the clear information given to the patients and taking all kinds of questions will build up the trust, and then maybe it will be easy to get to clinical trials. My patients in the past have been under my care for a long time, since we screened 1983, and finally the trial was 1996. During that time, I have been seeing them and also immunizing the uninfected family members. So that could have been the, I think, easier way to do. However, with the medication that lamivudine wasn't very good one, was anything problems, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So going back, I think the trust between the doctor and the patients, and then clear information, honest, clear information, that should be the basis for compliance. I mean, joining the clinical trials. Of course, you have to let them decide.
Right. Thank you.
That's no question.
Joe, do you have anything to add? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dr.
The
Hahn.
medicine that we have tried, lamivudine and adefovir, Hepcera, tervivudine, and the tenofovir, the Viriat, and the last one, Vemlidy, they have had no side effect. So I was probably lucky. There was absolutely no side effect physically. And then they knew that it was so easy to take a pill, small tablet, and then see the results. So we were both ends were very, very happy to see the results. So probably I have been very lucky to have the good drug given to me so we could do clinical trials.
Yeah, so positive benefits to the patient and for the future of medications for hepatitis B, certainly.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Joe, do you have any additional thoughts on your experience and maybe reassurance for patients potentially? I know yours was a bit different with the hepatitis Delta trial.
Well, first let me thank Dr. Hahn, because I have 3 of the drugs that you have researched and helped develop, I have benefited from, and it was amazing. I don't recall ever any side effects, and I know it's possible I would have had to have a liver transplant by now, or who knows if I'd even still be around. And I think those drugs made a huge, huge positive difference in my life. So thank you very much. In terms, Can you, are you asking about reassurance for patients in
Yeah,
clinical?
so,
Okay.
or any advice or suggestions you might give to a patient about if they're hesitant to participate in a clinical trial, for example.
Okay. Well, the clinicaltrials.gov was how I found the hepatitis D trial that I was involved with for 6 years. And if you got a serious illness and you're mystified, you don't know what to do, you would like to be, in my case, I thought I don't want to wait 20 years for something to come around. I want to be proactive. And it was a big help to have that, clinicaltrials.gov. I would also add that a medical dictionary is useful if you're just, some patients are lucky they have medical training. Others like me don't. And the little bit of science I had in high school and in college wasn't enough. But, with medical dictionary, and of course, don't ever hesitate to ask your doctors and researchers all the questions you need to ask. I mean, they want you to understand, and they're obligated to help you understand. And just because there is a description of the trial, sometimes that's not clear to patients, and questions are important. And yes, it is important to know your doctors and your researchers well. Don't forget that I believe by law and also by ethics, you have the right to leave a trial at any time. There were a few times where I wanted to leave and I hung in there because I was really committed to the research, and even if it didn't help me directly, you know, my data would be helping other people. And I met people at the NIH, patients who had I was in a trial that had the hope for a cure. I met people who had zero hope for a cure. They were on because they cared about their children, their grandchildren, and even just society as a whole. And they wanted to add to the body of knowledge. And, if those people who were suffering sometimes much worse than I ever did could get themselves to Washington, D.C. to be, to add to the information, well, then certainly I could, as someone who was being treated. And I should add that while the ultimate, the end result of this study for me was that I couldn't tolerate interferon and I had to leave the study early. I have been told by my local gastroenterologist that in his observation, even when antivirals don't seem to work, there seems to be some benefit. And now, 2.5 years after my hepatitis B is almost undetectable, and the hepatitis D has stayed pretty low. And my own local GI doctor believes that I did somehow benefit. It may not show in the results in the study papers, but that is a possibility with viral hepatitis drugs. You know, that's my unscientific opinion and hope. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chip. Thank you. So it sounds like regular communication with your doctor, trust, and coming with questions is really important to the relationship and to see if a trial is right for you. We have a couple of other questions. I think this might be for Dr. Han. You may be able to answer.
Before you question, can I just follow? I think the explaining the patients in a very lay term, not using medical jargon, helps a lot. You have to show how liver looks like, where the liver is, and what inflamed liver looks like.
Exactly.
Those simple, like a primary school student explaining in lay term, they understand much better. Also, when I tried with interferon, that was pretty toxic. Patients were losing. This was before we had the lamivudine. I tried the PEG interferon, which was once a week injection form, which was pretty toxic. Joe knows about it. Even though they come with a very kind of depressed look and losing weight, losing weight and so on, showing sympathy, compassion, and saying, maybe you're doing very well and maybe your virus is going down. So keep up with this one. So that sort of encouraged the patients. And I think also that sustained their willpower. So full compassion and understanding and always available to patients for any simple question. I think that was also very important to continue trials.
Definitely. Thank you so much for adding that, Dr. Han. I think that's so important. I think it sounds like your patients are very lucky to have you for sure. This next question asks a little bit more technical. Do trials include patients who have contracted the virus as an adult? I think one understanding of this individual is that those individuals only who contracted hepatitis B at birth were eligible to participate in trials. Could you speak to that?
Oh no, all the clinical trials didn't care when the virus was infected, the person was infected. It could have been at birth, it could be during adulthood, it could be during childhood. It didn't matter. At least the clinical trials I participated, there was no distinction, there was no discrimination. The only thing is we know those who got at birth, perinatal infection, they have had virus much longer time. So by the time they become adults, their history of having exposed to the virus and probably the progress to the cirrhosis and liver cancer was much more than those who acquired the hepatitis B during adulthood. So the ultimate prognosis may be different, but eligibility, no difference.
And a similar question to that, do clinical trials take a good cross-section of patients of various weights? It seems logical that a lightweight person might take a less dose medication than someone who might be more heavy set or heavier built.
No, I think as far as I know, it was all one dose set.
One dose.
Yes.
May I add?
Of course. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, in the 3 parts to the phase I was in, there were, number one, I never, my age or, I'm sorry, when I got the virus was not an indicator of whether I could be in the study. What can be a determination is how ill a person is. There's a point where a person is too ill to participate in a study, and it wouldn't be good for the study or the patient to be subjected to all of that. Oh, I forgot the other part of what I was going to say. Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Thanks for adding.
Of course,
And
let me just
okay,
finish. For
sure.
the eligibility for entering the study, you have certain level of liver enzyme elevation and the virus count and all those things. So if the person is severely ill, maybe they would be excluded. So I can answer to that question.
And can you also speak to, and this may be dependent on which study, but about how long does a participant expect to enroll in a clinical trial? Like, what does the duration look like?
I mean, the enrollment period?
Or the enrollment period, and then, you know, how long should a person expect to be participating in that trial?
Oh, that's the first thing. They will tell you how long the study will go. From the time they start, how long it will last. Yes, it is all set.
Okay, and that's dependent on whatever study.
That's right.
Okay. And then this question is going to the cure. So this individual has hepatitis B. They wrote, and they've had their blood work on track for a long time, and wanted to know what are the odds of their surface antigen ever becoming negative.
Without treatment or naturally?
They have been on treatment since, I think, maybe 10 years is what it says, I believe.
Okay. Depending on the population, I think those who acquired during adulthood, the chance of getting surface antigen negativity is much higher. Those who are infected perinatally, the chance of getting rid of hepatitis B surface antigen is very, very low. I have not seen any. Only those who acquired got rid of hepatitis B surface antigen. However, the person does not develop antibodies spontaneously most of the time. Sometimes they do develop, but the antibody can be directed to another subtype of genotype of hepatitis B. So just having hepatitis B antibody does not completely relax you because the virus itself is still in the liver cell nucleus. That's the problem. Even though you lost the surface antigen, you apparently had antibody somehow, some other time, but I saw patients still coming with the cancer because the original hepatitis B virus was still in the liver cell nucleus. So that's why at this point, we have been very happy with these 6-7 antiviral drugs, which keep the patients happy and live pretty normal life. And when they get liver cancer, they get treated or they undergo liver transplantation. But there is a still continuous fear that someday someone may develop liver cancer. So now, with the advancement of hepatitis C virus cure, all the investigators are now focusing on hopefully for hepatitis B cure. Not only we can suppress the viral replication, which is one of the stages during replication cycle, we really have to get rid of the virus in the liver cell. So this movement for HBV cure is on the way, and I'm very, very happy. So we are currently doing 2 clinical trials, but I expect many research labs are really focusing on developing hepatitis B cure drug, and I see pretty bright future in a few years. That's my hope.
Definitely. That would be great. Go ahead,
Can
sir.
can I add something?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, the most important thing that I want to say, because it's still not, you know, we need to keep emphasizing that people with hepatitis B, B as in boy, should be tested, in my opinion, for hepatitis D, D as in dog. So you've got B and D. And if we find a cure for B, my hope is that that would cure D, because apparently D cannot survive in the body, as far as we know. Dr. Hahn could correct me if I'm wrong. But if you get rid of the B as in boy, the D as in dog will probably go too. But it is important. I mean, they are coming. The drugs that I was involved with testing, those are of some use for hepatitis D. It's also called Delta. And it is important to know, you know, there's a lot of people with hepatitis B who have no idea they have D. So you should ask your doctors to test you for that. And like I have Kaiser, and they still, when I ask to be tested for D, that's a whole special thing. They're not, it's not in their regular repertoire of tests. It takes a lot longer to get the test, but it's important. I also remember the other question, which someone had asked about, are drugs given to you on the basis of weight? And in the trials I was in, that wasn't part of the protocol, but in some trials there may be, in one of the trials there were 3 different doses of the main drug. And, you know, being a blind study, I didn't know which dose I got. So you may be getting a different dose, but it's just in trying to figure out the best, safest dose. People are given different amounts of the drug.
I think the doses, the 3 doses you were randomized, could be just to see efficacy of individual dose, not based on the weight. The only thing based on the weight was ribavirin. When we tried with interferon, pegylated interferon with ribavirin. Ribavirin was calculated by the weight, but that was the only drug that I remember. For hepatitis B alone, it's all set drug, set dosage.
Thank you both. I wanted to see if anybody, including Erin, Joe, Dr. Hahn, if you guys had any last comments before we end. I know we're just a little over time.
No, I don't have any. If the patients are anxious to get clinical trial, approach your online, clinicaltrials.gov. If they find the right location, approach it and make sure you find the right investigator, get clear explanation in lay term, and then comply and participate.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, any last comments?
I do wonder, I am so glad that my trials ended well before the pandemic. And I wonder, I have no idea how the coronavirus pandemic has affected trials, but you know, I just think, you know, surely when you contact researchers through clinicaltrial.gov, you'll have an answer to that question. When is the trial starting? Is it on hold at the moment? What are the extra safety measures to being involved in a trial? Those would be questions if I were going to join a new trial.
Thank you. So those are helpful tips, I think, for people who might be looking at joining, certainly to ask. Erin, any last comments to add?
No, nothing other than thanks for having me. And if anybody has any other questions about resources like clinicaltrials.gov or about what types of services and trainings we offer at NNLM, you're welcome to reach out to me by email. I know my demonstration was pretty quick, but like I said, we have a lot of other trainings and courses that you can take for free. So if there's something specific you're looking for, just let me know and I'll see what I can direct you to.
Great. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate you being here as well. I wanted to thank all the speakers. I know we didn't get to a couple of questions, and one was, are the specific drugs mentioned available in the UK? I believe they are, and also check out the resource on clinicaltrials.gov if you're interested in joining a clinical trial in the UK. I did notice they listed trials all over that were happening, so that would be a great resource for you to identify trials that might be local for you. If you do have questions about anything discussed today, you can reach out to us at the emails listed here. You can also check out our website at www.hepb.org. As we kind of highlighted some of the resources there, like the Drug Watch page and the Physician Finder there. I hope that you enjoyed today's session. Again, thanks to our speakers. It was a great session. Thanks for your time and for spending a little extra time with us as we went over a little bit. I apologize for that. We will be in touch through email, and we look forward to being in connecting with you all online. Thanks to you all so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Love, Joe.
Share.
Thank you.